So Chris, we'll start off. Where did your career in basketball, specifically in the Philippines, get started?
All right, so my career got started at Ateneo de Manila University. Nico was actually already there at the time that I showed up. I was coming from a Division II college in the United States. It was New Mexico Highlands University. And I decided to make the jump and transfer out to Ateneo, just basically because I knew I wasn't really going to make it to the NBA. So I figured that my best chance at still playing professional basketball would be in the Philippines. So, Coach Black was one of those guys that I talked to. He convinced me to come out this way. But, he told me that it would be a good move for me and it would help me get established here in the Philippines. So that's what I did. And that's kind of where it all started. I had to sit out for 2 years to do a residency. And during that time, that's whenever I was watching Nico and Coach Norman and the rest of the Ateneo Blue Eagles win their 4th and 5th straight championship. And so I got to see that winning culture a little bit, but I didn't necessarily win when I was in college. But just seeing it kind of helped me to understand what culture I was getting myself into. And from there, I was able to play my couple years, and then eventually I had to go through the PBA D League for a year. And then after I did my required games there, I entered the PBA draft, and that's kind of how I ended up where I am today.
Now, you're a Phil M player, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What can you speak, or how can you speak about the opportunities for Phil M's that maybe are unaware or don't know about the opportunities that are out there for them to go play in the Philippines?
Sure, yeah, there's, this is a basketball country. Everyone in this country loves the game of basketball. As far as like opportunities for Phil-Ams, yeah, there's definitely opportunity, but then you also got to know with that opportunity comes a lot of competition because each team is only allowed 5 Phil foreigners, not just Phil-Ams, but Phil foreigners. So if you were not born here in the Philippines, then you are considered a Phil foreigner by birth certificate. You got people that were raised here, guys like CJ Perez. He was born in Hong Kong but raised here, but technically he's considered a Phil foreigner. So that's just kind of how the rules go, somewhat similar to how FIBA does the rules. But again, going back to your question, there is a lot of opportunity here, but you also got to know that just like anywhere else in the world, you're going to have to compete. And you're not just competing against other Phil-Ams, but you're also competing against the locals here as well. So it's by no means easy to make that happen. But if you definitely want to play basketball for a living, then you really got to commit. And, this opportunity changed my life and changed my family's life and everything that I'm able to do for a lot of people. So it's definitely an opportunity that a lot of people could strive for. And I can be living proof of that.
So, Nico, let's go to you. When did your basketball career in the Philippines get started?
It started early when I was, I'd say, 10 years old. I've been competing in varsity leagues, I think, when I was in 5th grade. So it went on from there until I played in high school, played in the NCAA in high school. And then when I got to Ateneo, we played in the UAAP, which was the NCAA in the States. So that's the UAAP over here. And I won 5 championships with Coach Norman in college, and that's how it started.
Okay, and then when did you actually enter PBA?
I entered PBA in 2013 after my 5 years in college. And I've been in the league for 7 years. Just like Chris, I also had to go play in the PBA D League because it's a requirement that you play, I think, 2 conferences in the D League where you enter the draft.
Okay, so now you guys are both currently on the Morocco squad. Chris, going back to you now, how long have you been there? When did your career start specifically with the Bulls?
Yeah, so I got drafted in the PBA 2015, and this would be my 5th year with the organization. And we've made it to the finals 3 times, but we lost 3 times. But that was the farthest that this franchise has been ever since it's started. And, it's just nice being a part of that. And actually getting to be with Coach Norman and some of the other staff that we had, because they're familiar faces from our Ateneo days, both me and Nico. We've had some of these guys around for a long time, so it makes it kind of easy to know them and how they work and what they want from their players.
And Nico, how about you?
I've bounced around the league before I got to Meralco. I've had 4 teams, and Meralco was my 5th. So this is my 3rd year with Meralco now. But before Meralco, um, I was in that space where you had to look for familiarity. You had to look for the perfect situation, and I had to look for my niche as a player. So when I got to Meralco, that's when I started to find my niche, and it also helps that I played for Coach Norman in college.
All right, so let's look specifically at the Bolts for now. And like you said, Chris, there's the 3 championships that you made, or the finals that you made it to. I'm actually very familiar with that. I live actually pretty close to Allen Durham here in the States, so I'm pretty familiar. Yeah, so I'm pretty familiar with how that ended. In fact, we talked with Coach Black about that several times. So looking at that, how has making it to the finals that many times and ending it in the same fashion those 3 times at least, do you think that has been a negative or a positive? So let me rephrase that. The way it's resulted, the fact that they've seen the same 2 teams in the finals for that conference ending in the same way, has that built up a rivalry that's good for the league, or is it almost a negative that people see the same teams every time?
I think in our case, it's a great thing. We've never been to the finals, so we're kind of a young team as far as the postseason goes. But us just getting there proved a lot for us as a team and as an organization. So it wasn't just the first time. The first time you can say, yeah, that's just like the first time going through. You never really been through it. You never know what to expect. But the second time, that's whenever you're kind of expecting a different outcome. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. So, of course, you can either get discouraged or you've got to pick yourself up and try to get the team going and motivated again to try to get that third one. Now, the third one didn't go through as we thought either. But, again, I think this is all just a learning process. And for us, we tried not to be too hard on ourselves just for, failing 3 times like that. I do believe that it's a healthy rivalry. It's a good rivalry for the league because, the team that we played, they're one of the favorites as far as popularity goes. So, the people love seeing them, and then just to have, a rivalry against them, that kind of, puts a good story out there for the people to take in. But as a player, of course, you don't like going down 3-0 on anybody. So I've been wanting to get that one back for a while. But, of course, things got to fall into place the right way, but we just take it in stride and just keep on trying to find out what we can do better, finally break through, similar to the NCAA and how you only get one chance at that big dance. And if you don't make it, then it's tough getting back in. But, you do get some valuable experience once you do get in. So I definitely think it's a good thing overall. It's all dependent on how you look at it and perspective, of course. But me, I'm one of those optimistic guys that just see it as a challenge. And, if anything, I want to face them again in the 4th series just so I can beat them rather than, getting a championship over anyone else. But overall, I think it's okay. It's a good thing for the league. People enjoy seeing it. So hopefully we can balance out that series eventually.
And Nico, I'm going to adjust yours just a little bit. Since you played in more areas, if we look at the league in a more broad sense, and again, I am new looking from the outside looking in, so I'm definitely not the expert in PBA, but I'll tell you that every time I seem to look, San Miguel wins Philippine Cup, then we have Morocco versus Ginebra, and a few of the other top tiers, but then you have some are at the bottom almost every time, at least it seems like. Do you see that for you as a negative or a positive for the league when we seem to see the same teams on top and similar, if not the same teams on the bottom?
I think it goes both ways. It's a positive because you build rivalries like the Ginebra, Meralco rivalries. So you got players like us who wants to compete against them every time because we want to get back at them. And also a negative on the part of teams below the standings some because it would be nice to see if everybody would be able to compete at the same level, so we can have surprises, keep the fans interested. I'm sure not everyone is rooting for a certain team. Other teams are rooting for those teams. And if those fans can be more involved and more interested and excited, then it will just be for the benefit of the league.
So, Chris, going back to you here, when we were talking about, or, when we look at the Philippines, for people that aren't familiar with PBA, they don't realize the level of basketball there is, but even more specifically, the level of fandom that's there in the Philippines for their professional basketball. How can you speak to that, being a professional player in the PBA, in your experience that's off the court with fans around you, recognizing you, I'm assuming, and all of those experiences?
Man, it's a dream come true. Honestly, it's every basketball player's dream, really. You always think about playing basketball for a living, and then of course you think about being in the NBA, right? And you got endorsements, and you go places, and you got the celebrity treatment and things like that. Well, it's essentially the same way on this side. Obviously, we're not getting paid at nearly as much as they do in the NBA, but that speaks volumes about the fans, that they actually watch us, and that whenever you can go to there's 7,000 plus islands here, and you can go to one of those islands, any of those islands, and somebody will know you, and that just speaks volumes about the league, and that the people have that passion for basketball, and they've been watching basketball, and they can actually give you a scouting report about the whole league, better than a lot of other people can. So it's nice just to know that they actually watch and they know your skill set and how you play and all those different things. And I think you can see a lot of that in the Filipino culture in itself. They're very social people, and they love interacting with one another. And you can find a 5-on-5 game almost anywhere in the city or anywhere in the Philippines for that matter. You can have shoes on, sandals on, or they call it chanelas. Or, you can be barefoot, and there's going to be some type of basketball somewhere. So definitely a hooper's dream to be out here and to get to witness all this stuff that's happening on this side of the world.
Nico, let's go to you. What would you agree with that about your experiences off the court with fans?
Oh yeah, definitely. As a kid, I think we all dreamt of being in the NBA, but as you grow old, you become more realistic, and then you, right? And then this is the closest thing to it. I mean, as a Filipino, as a Filipino athlete, basketball player, this would be the Filipino dream, to be able to play professionally, to be recognized around the Philippines, just like what Chris said. Whenever you go to the provinces south of the Philippines or north of the Philippines, whenever the beaches, those small farms out there, then people you get surprised that people know you. Like the jeepney drivers, I'm not sure if you know what the jeepney is. Yeah. The jeepney drivers, the security guards, janitors, they all know your name. They ask you about your teammates. They ask you about your game. Then they say congrats to you after a big win. So it's very humbling and flattering.
So I think I know the answer, but a lot of people that are going to watch are going to be people that potentially are looking to play overseas in a particular sport. So Chris, for you, let's focus on Alan. Okay, so you talked about going off and people obviously noticing you, and I think I know the answer, but if Alan was to walk anywhere in the country, would they know who he was? Not just because maybe he doesn't look like the average Filipino, but because they actually know who he is wherever he goes?
Oh, no question. I think AD has definitely made a name for himself out here. And I think once you're a return athlete or a return import and they get you more than once, then that even proves your value even more towards the Filipino people, because that means that you've done so well that the people engage with you, the organizations engage with you for them to want to bring you back. And I think that's something that AD does well, and a lot of other imports, they do really well. The ones that you see coming back is that they have that connection with the Filipino people. They're not scared to go out and talk to them and socialize with them and be open to accepting the culture. Whereas you have the players that are opposite, and they're kind of in their shell when they come out. They don't want to go out. They don't want to interact, or they don't want to deal with all the people and things like that. And those are two completely opposite sides, but you can see that here the effect is different, because either the people are going to accept you for that, or they're just going to be like, oh, he's kind of snobbish, that type of import. And then they'll kind of just throw you to that category to the side. So, your play has a lot to do with it, but then it's also how you treat people, how you how open you are to the culture, and how open you are to receiving the culture. And I think that's going to be the imprint that a lot of the people are left with, and not just your play. Because obviously people have seen AD's talent, and they even, like Nico was saying, you have security guards and a lot of other people that are around here, and they'll say, oh, you can get it next time. They actually know what's going on, and they know how to respond to it. So if you as an import can interact with those people or learn how to deal with those people in a positive way, I definitely feel like you'll have a chance to be able to make a career here, or at least multiple stints. So, yeah.
So Nico, I'll get to you in just a second. I want a quick jump on what Chris said again. The way you're kind of treating the people around you. Do you think that it actually has a legitimate difference when it comes to the teams that are looking to re-sign you? So obviously your play matters a whole lot on the court, like you said, but are managers and team owners really looking at how you act off the court as far as considering bringing you back?
Oh yeah, it does. I think they really look at your character. They look at your attitude. We've had pros in here for like 12, 13 years because they work hard. They're never late. They're good leaders. They don't necessarily play huge minutes in every game, but you never see them sulk. You never see them say something bad to their teammates. They're always encouraging. So those are what makes solid players last in this league.
Chris, I don't know if you've experienced it or not, but if you have, what has been something that you've noticed maybe more than once out of maybe a first-time import that they weren't expecting when coming to the Philippines, that maybe has caught them off guard or maybe even held them back from being their best?
I definitely think it was the culture. I've seen a little bit of both, where this is some players' first gig, and I've seen, the veterans as well. So now the veterans, obviously, they know they've been around, they've been to different countries, so they kind of have that experience and know what to expect whenever it comes to their gig, as far as being here in the Philippines. Now, the first-timers, I think those are the ones that have a hard time adjusting, because they're coming from a system and they have all these expectations, and they're expecting to kind of for it to kind of go smoothly, but it's not always like that. And like I was saying, if you're not really open to learning the culture that you're going to, or learning the team or the people that you're with, and you literally just come in, don't really say a word to anybody, practice, and then you go home, that doesn't really build that chemistry with the team that you're looking for. And in this league, you only get, 11 games. So each game matters, right? And I think we're one of the most cutthroat leagues as far as if you do not perform, they will send you home really, really quick. So you can have, I've seen a couple imports get 40 and 20 games back to back, and then they lose the next game, and then they ship them out either for character reasons, the chemistry wasn't there with the team and things like that. He was hooping, he was getting his buckets, he was getting numbers, but because the chemistry wasn't there, that's the primary reason that they send them home. So yeah, it's very cutthroat, like I was saying, and I think really adapting to the culture is going to be a key for you to succeed, not just here in the Philippines, but anywhere in the world.
So Nico, other than obviously people want to keep having jobs and keep getting paid and keep playing basketball, other than those things, what is it do you think that the PBA or maybe the Philippines in general offers that makes some players want to come back? What's their strongest aspect that they offer?
It's the passion of the fans. I think I've spoken to a number of imports. They said there's nothing like it over here. outside of the NBA, the passion of the fans, how involved the fans are, and I think they also love being with their Filipino teammates. The local players are easy to play with. They really respect the imports, and then they look up to the imports as leaders. So if you're a good leader as an import, or if you get to lift the spirit of your team up, just like what AD does to us, then we embrace him just as family. To us, AD is family. So that's what makes the Filipino culture special to the imports.
So this one, I'll ask for both of you because you probably both have different experiences. But I've seen finals with the games packed, right? You sell them all out. It's a big deal. But we also know those weak games with some of the bottom two-tier teams aren't bringing in a lot of people, right? And that does happen in regular sports. Obviously, a Tuesday MLB game doesn't bring in a whole lot of people either. We know that. But do you think that's damaging to the league, something that's common, or something that can be fixed? What's your view on that, Chris?
I think it's just part of the process. Like you said, it happens in all sports, and there's always that struggle. There's always that finding a balance of how you can create a team on a budget. And I think that's the problem that people have here, is that we're a company based and not city or organization based. We're running off of business plans basically. So if your company obviously has more money for advertisement, you're going to get seen more. So that's kind of how it works as far as this league goes. I do feel that there is a balance though, because like you said, even though you have those games that aren't so packed, whenever you do play those higher marketed teams, those games are going to be packed, and that kind of makes up for it. It's kind of a lot to ask for those lower teams to be able to pack a stadium whenever obviously your players aren't as skilled, and you just know the quality of that game isn't going to be necessarily as good as the quality of the big games. And I think that's why everybody goes to watch those big games live, because they want good quality. They're spending their hard-earned money to watch these basketball games, and they want to get their money's worth. So it makes sense. I do feel that with the presence of digital platforms, that definitely helps our cause as far as the lower market teams. It gives us a lot more exposure than we had before in the past. And I think that definitely helps the league overall. It gives some of those younger guys that are on those lower market teams trying to make a name for themselves, it gives them more exposure, and it gives them a chance to really, put their name out there at an earlier stage than waiting to get traded to maybe San Miguel or Ginebra to finally get their name in that limelight because they're finally getting to the playoffs and things like that. But overall, I feel like since there is that balance, it's a good thing that you have some of those teams that are pulling other teams' weight. You're always going to need that as far as the league goes. We are a team as far as the PBA goes because we all want this league to be known as a credible league around the world. So I think that helps having those lower teams being able to kind of get that magnifying glass and that telescope that you can take a deeper look with social media.
So Nico, I want to adjust yours just a little bit, and obviously you don't name anybody or you. It's a general question, but do you think you know of anybody, or you could think of somebody, maybe you don't know them directly, that if they were to be traded to one of those lower tier teams, it would be a problem? Like we've seen it in professional leagues here. They go, I'm not going to go play there. Like I'm not playing for them. And do you think you know of anyone or that situation where the disparity is so high that they wouldn't want to necessarily play for one of the lower end teams because it's such a difference from low end to high end in the league?
There might be a few. Maybe as in, if you're a veteran, say a 10-year veteran in the league, you'd want to be in a winning culture in a team that goes to the finals or to the playoffs each year, primarily because you get to earn more by entering the playoffs. So you have a different mindset as an elder player. You would want to be able to provide for your family. But as a younger player, which was based on my perspective years ago, I wanted to play in those teams so I would be able to showcase my talents, be able to show out. And a few years ago, I was in Ginebra, who is a solid team, who's very set in their rotation and system. So I didn't get a lot of opportunity there. Then a year later, I was traded to an expansion team, and in that expansion team, I felt like I was able to show out and just get more playing time, get more experience. Then after that, I was able to get to Meralco. So I think as a young player, you'd welcome that opportunity to be able to get that experience.
Nico, I'm going to do a follow-up with you real quick, and that's you went from Ginebra to an expansion team. Going back to that fandom experience, Ginebra sells a lot more tickets than the average team. Was it any sort of a blow to you to go and play for an expansion team knowing that you're playing for a fraction of who you were playing in front of beforehand?
I as a player, I welcomed it. I knew that I was gonna get more opportunities there. I'm gonna get more playing time, um, or or more exposure. So, and it was also a very different culture in Ginebra. It was very serious, all about the winning championships. Then when I got to the expansion team, that's where I learned to be able to enjoy the game again, to just be able to play freely, be able to explore, say whatever moves you want to do or whatever, and just discover yourself and be able to know what stuff can you do in the league, what stuff can you do against this person or this player. So I welcomed it as a player.
So we'll just a couple more topics we'll quick touch on here. Going, Chris, now you mentioned social media, making it easier to see games, see clips, things like that. That actually came up in an interview with your coach, talking about why possibly ticket sales have dropped or lower, is because in the day you had to be at the game to see it, basically, and now that's definitely not the case. Now you mentioned it as a positive because it helps people show off what they got and showcase themselves. Have you seen the downside in ticket sales? Have you not been around long enough to notice that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen the dip in ticket sales. That's just, I feel like a part of it is because of the schedule that we have. Whenever you look at PBA basketball, we play year round. So we're technically available year round to the people. And say they don't want to watch Morocco versus NLEX. They're like, okay, I don't want to watch that one. So I can watch Kiefer or Chris play, some other team, like Ginebra or San Miguel. I'd rather spend my money on that game, and I'll just watch the other ones on TV. Now, for the NBA, and it's kind of the other way around, where you have one season and you're selling season tickets, right? So that's a majority of your ticket holders, of your fans are season ticket holders, whereas we don't have that type of thing here. And us being accessible to them all the time, that makes it hard for people to show up all the time. And we live in Metro Manila. Yeah, there's a lot of people, but at the same time, the traffic here is really, really bad. So for you to get to and from a game, that's basically a whole day of like planning in itself. So it's not like you can just go to the game, go home, and you're on with your day. That's going to be the rest of your night. So you really have to commit to something like that. And a lot of people don't necessarily have the time to commit all the time like that. I would say that's the basic, that's the difference between, I would say, UAAP basketball and the PBA basketball. UAAP, there's one season, and all the fans are tied into your colleges and things like that. So they're a little more passionate about it. That one season comes around, everybody wants tickets. Everybody's trying to get their hands on tickets and things like that, because there's that one season that people have to wait for. On the contrary, the PBA is opposite. We have so many games that you're like, oh, I didn't see this one this time, so I'll just get the next one. And then the ones that everyone's fighting for are the playoffs. But again, social media definitely helps magnify those lower market teams and gives them opportunities outside of basketball, even to expand themselves. Like with social media, now you have endorsements and all kinds of other influencer type things that you can also earn money from. And that wasn't there before, like in Coach Norman's time. So I think that's the biggest difference between then and now. But overall, I think our viewership is doing pretty good as a PBA, just not live sales. So how we can do that, I don't know. That's going to take some planning on there.
Well, to your example, I don't know who wouldn't want to see Kiefer play live. So, but going on to Nico here, let's look at, since those numbers are a little bit lower, and we just, we covered that a little bit, what would you suggest as far as the PBA as a whole, or maybe team specific, could do to bring more people in? What would be your suggestion?
I've heard this from a lot of guys for a number of years. I think the ticket prices, they could lower the ticket prices. And I think they did that last season. They gave discounts on certain games. And I agree with Chris, the traffic in this city is really crazy. It's really hard for people to get to the games. They'll have to probably spend 6 hours or 4 to 6 hours on the road just to get to watch a game. It would take them number of hours to wait for the ride going home and going to the game. So that's really the main problem.
And yeah, I've been there several times. I can definitely speak to the traffic being just something you don't expect until you're in it. You're like, oh, this is real. This is the real deal.
Yeah.
So I agree to that.
And to add, I think provincial games always sell out. So I think if we could have more of that in the future. I've never been in a provincial game where it was half empty. It was always full. So because just like what Chris said, people in Manila can be like, oh, I can watch him next week. They have 2 games next week. I can watch him next week. But when you go to a province, they'll be thinking like, this might be my only chance to see this guy play. So I'll make sure that I'll be there.
Yeah.
Do you, this can be for either, I don't know, but do they play in the same size venue when you do provincial games?
No, not at all. Like it'd probably be half the size of Araneta. So you're talking about maybe like 5,000 people, 5,000 to 10,000 people stadiums. They're usually colleges or old arenas already. But they're starting to improve the arenas in the province. I think we've seen a lot of the gyms are actually starting to get a lot nicer. So like Nico said, I wouldn't mind getting to those province games and playing for the fans out there. Of course, logistically, it makes more sense for us to go to them rather than for them to come to us. So I don't mind doing that, especially because we get to see the Philippines as well. We get to see how different each island and how different the cultures are within the Philippines, it's a beautiful thing as well. So I don't mind that.
I tell you what, it's going to separate the imports versus who's dedicated to staying there and who's not when they got to travel out to the province in the heat and all that stuff. Then you're going to know who's there for the long haul.
Yes.
I want to check, what is a current PBA player's view on how do you look at the MPBL?
I think it's a good opportunity for players who don't get to play much in the PBA or players who don't have a team in the PBA. MPBL has given them a number of jobs. There are 30 teams in the MPBL. Am I right?
I think it's 30 now.
30 teams. So that's what a whole lot of players who were able to get jobs, who are able to provide for their families, whole lot of coaches, utility staffs. And so I think it's healthy for the Filipino athlete culture.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, just to add on to that, it's great seeing a lot of these are some of our colleagues. These are guys that me and Nico's played with in college, and Nico, some of them he's played with in high school and even some in the PBA. So, of course, you don't want to see our colleagues out of a job and them struggling for other sources of income. And I think like you were saying, it's a great opportunity for them to do that. But not only that, but it also keeps the PBA on their toes as well. Because if the PBA knows that there's competition and there's other places for players to go, that's going to force them to keep their standards high and their level of play high and keep the league with that professional standard to separate themselves from the NPBL and have their own identity. So I think the fight for that Premier League is definitely one-sided for the PBA, but the NPBL definitely helps to keep that prestige name to the PBA. And again, you're going to see some of those NPBL guys try to make it back to the PBA. And you're going to see some of those PBA guys go down to the NPBL. So I think it definitely helps for any hooper that wants a job, that there's a number of available jobs, whether or not it's the PBA or not. I mean, you got to fight for that. There's less teams, but having those 30 teams is big time.
So this, and I can cut this next question out if there's not a diplomatic answer. Like if you want to be careful on your answer, that's fair. But I do have a technical question. Where does that leave the D League of the PBA now that you have the NPBL kind of? The way I look at it from the outside, it's PBA and NPBL. I think, I don't know how accurate that is. Is the D League in between somewhere, or is it like everybody kind of forgot about that?
Yeah. Well, D League is how would you explain that? It's like, the D League is mandatory. You have to do the D League to enter the PBA draft. Okay, so if you're planning on entering the draft for the PBA, obviously that's what a lot of people want to do. Then you have to get your D League games in. However, there's guys, like I was saying, that have made it to the PBA already, went through the draft process, went through the combine, all that, and they're just not getting their minutes, or they haven't gotten their chance yet. So they decide to go ahead and head over to the NPBL, which they know they're going to play. They know they're going to get paid. They still get really, really good fan crowd sizes. So they're not really giving up too much other than, that title of being in the PBA and maybe a difference in salary. But at the same time, they still get that same opportunity to play basketball.
All right, I don't want to hold you too much longer. I do got a few more real quick, and that's one of the big differences, at least from my eyes, between the NPBL and the PBA is in one league you're representing companies, and in another you're representing localities, cities, whatever, districts. What do you think in the long run is maybe stronger? Obviously the PBA is stronger, we know that. But as far as the two comparisons, what are some of the key differences? What do you think makes one stronger over the other?
I think PBA would be easier to maintain. That's why it has lasted for over 40 years. Years ago, there was MBA, which was just like how MPBL is constructed, where you have a team for every city. That team unfortunately collapsed because it was hard for them to maintain the expenses, because the salaries were getting too high, and then they had to travel all over the Philippines. So practically, the system of PBA works better for longevity standpoint.
And that actually makes a whole lot of sense. It does. Financially, being able to own the team and travel, I guess, because you, for the most part, other than your province games, you're playing in, for the most part, the same area, right? Everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's end here. When an import comes to play, what does, for the most part, their life look like? Obviously, it's all different. All their situations are different. But is it practice always? Are they getting out in the community? Are they able to like run into the average person, or is it you're playing ball all day, every day, and if you're not, you're going home?
Here in Manila, it's pretty congested. I'm sure you know that. So it's kind of impossible to be able to be in Manila and not run into people. So you're definitely going to run into people here in the Philippines and in Manila. But yes, of course, there's going to be basketball all the time. But at the same time, there is, depending on the import and depending on what you like to do, there's other lifestyle things that you can do as well. You see that there's a nightlife here as well for imports that like to just kind of relax whenever it's not about basketball all the time, or whenever they want to take their mind off things, because getting to know the imports, obviously they all have their own things going on. They got families back home. They got kids going on. So they got a lot of other things on their mind too that we have to take into consideration. So Basically, it's just how we can make them as comfortable as possible. Not every team is the same, but over in Morocco, we try to have like team buildings and things like that with our imports. So when they get here, we can already get to know them, their chemistry, and build that chemistry with the team and stuff like that. So I definitely feel that imports, they'll have a tough time if they're not open to taking in the culture. But like we were saying earlier, if you are that type of import, you like to eat even if you like to eat the Filipino food and things like that, that even shows a lot of openness. And I think the people will love you for that. And they'll be willing to work with you more and accept you more as an import.
Yeah, eating the food, absolutely. I have to have balut every time I'm over there. So they make me, so I have to. But all right, so Nico, for you, as a team, from the teams that you've been with and your experience, has it been an effort of those teams, or at least a majority, to get out in the community at least a little bit? I know it makes it a little bit more difficult when you're not tied with a specific community like we talked about, but is it still an effort of the team to make sure you're getting out there and seeing the people that are supporting you on the court?
Oh yeah, I think teams have a number of guestings per year. They make sure that we reach out to the community, and the PBA has PBA Cares, where we are able to get into basketball camps with kids, be able to help out the schools, so the kids would be able to, meet their PBA idols, or just be able to get inspired by their the PBA players. So it's as a player, it's an opportunity that I look forward to. It's something that we do whenever we play in provincial games. We do that usually a day before the game. So that's something great about the provincial games. We're able to reach out, and we're able to reach out to the kids and the people in that community.
To finish off here, we'll just have each of you give us one thing maybe we haven't talked about that you think people that are unfamiliar with need to know about either the PBA or the Morocco Bolt specifically.
I feel like we're definitely on the map now as far as the Morocco Bolts. I think people don't really take us so lightly as much as they used to in the past. I'd really just like to see the level of play just pick up to a whole nother level. For us to be able to bring the best out of one another as competitors and as athletes, not take things personal, or not have to worry about what team. Just focus on your level of play and getting better. I think that's what we can all control as players, and I think that will help the PBA as a brand in itself raise its prestige, as well as whatever team that you're playing for. So ultimately, it comes down to the player to have that drive in them to bring that best out of the players across from them. I know you just saw The Last Dance, and that's something that MJ did really, really well. So that's something that I hope that a lot of the PBA guys will come back with that hunger and come back with that fire. And I think we're going to have some really, really good games when we get back.
Nico, what do you think? Something that you would say that people that are unfamiliar with either the PBA and the Morocco Bolts?
Just like New said, I think you really have to take Morocco seriously now when you face them. Though we haven't won a championship, but I'd like to say that we were able to set that winning culture, that culture where it's championship or nothing, culture where we are able to lift each other up. We're able to compete hard each day without taking it personal. So I'm just excited for us to be able to play again. I'm sure it would be really competitive, knowing that we haven't played competitive basketball for 3 months. It would be people would be really inspired to play.
I have one quick follow-up now, because you both said the same thing, and that's that you guys are getting stronger. Alan's been playing for you guys for a while, and he obviously can't play for you always. And not to say he's the only reason why you guys made it to finals, but he's a big part of it. I think we'd all agree on that. And so can you confidently tell me and everybody watching that when that time comes that Alan doesn't come back to Morocco, you're still going to be competing at the top level?
Yeah, I definitely feel like we're at that point now. We've improved our all Filipino roster uh, by a lot, actually. We got some size now. We got shooters. We got a lot of guards. So we got a lot of things there in place. And I think the reason why we do so well with AD is he complements everybody and he knows how everybody plays. And we're comfortable with him. We have that chemistry already. So that kind of explains AD. And then just us being here locally, the interaction between imports is actually something that it happens a lot. You know, you have some imports that will stay a whole conference. You have some that, I think it was the conference before we had AD last time. We had how many? 3 imports? 3 or 4 imports?
Three imports.
Yeah. So we had like 3 imports within a 12-game season. So that right there is already that's dealing with a lot of in and out and a lot of business things like that. So as players, we have to be professional. But of course, it's always nice having a familiar face.
Nico, same confidence for you?
Yeah, same comments. I think we were able to build our roster, and New and some other guys have been there for 5 years. I've been there for 3. A number of guys have been there for multiple years, so we're able to get to know each other more, blend with each other, and I think it's just a process that every team goes through.
So, you know, I have a theory, and I tested it on one of my other interviews with someone associated with the PBA, and it proved to be right. So we're gonna try it with you real quick. Other than the Bolts, if you had to pick the best logo in the league, which one would you pick?
Logo, huh?
No.
Oh, that's tough.
This one has worked. The one I'm thinking of has worked every time I've asked. So I'm thinking it's scientific.
That's tough, huh? I kind of like. I don't like Colombians. Let's just weed those out. Colombian Blackwater, no. Phoenix is okay. Yeah, Phoenix is starting. I don't know. Their color scheme kind of threw me off a little bit recently. Rain or shine, not so much. Magnolia, not so much. San Miguel's kind of. It's like.
I'd say.
Talking text.
I'd say San Miguel just because their logo is classic, and I've been
classic,
seeing it since when I was 7, 8 years old. That
does weigh into it, the classicness of it. I would agree to that. I would say though, every other time I've done this, it's been NLEX. Just a sleek.
You say NLEX?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they rebranded that recently.
Yes.
That's that one's okay. Let's see. I was trying to think. That's good.
Well, Ginebra, is it just the words? Ginebra is just the words.
They have like the basketball with the crown on it. I've seen that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like Morocco has the best logo with the bull.
No, I'll give you the best colors. I'll give you the best colors.
Yeah, the colors too.
I think the colors.
But I think. Yeah, I don't know. That's.
I like the bolt. You can easily get an emoji of that bolt and send it to your teammates.
All right, guys, that's all I got for you. And when this is up, I'll let you know. Okay, I appreciate it a whole lot. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys.